Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. All right. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I am very excited to be talking a little bit to you today about what is the deal with sugar for runners. And, we're already well into season 2 of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast here. And of course, the topic of sugar and carbohydrates and fueling, all of these things are really common topics that come up and things that we discuss regularly. Of course, I'm answering questions about sugar and how much sugar you should have and what types of sugar are okay, when it's okay to have sugar as a runner, all kinds of things like that are topics that I, of course, cover with my clients almost on a daily basis. We're having these conversations, but we haven't really done an episode specifically around sugar and, rather than it being more about the timing of nutrition and stuff like that, we haven't really zeroed in on this topic. And I thought it was such a great one to cover because I think that sugar, especially as a runner, is probably one of the most, I'll say, confusing and maybe even conflicting topics that we can cover when it comes to nutrition. And I see this a lot because, people are often on their social media feeds, like in the running communities, looking for advice on intra-run fuel, for example. What should I take along with me for fueling during my run? What sport product should I use, or maybe what should I not use? What recommendations do people have for, their favorite gels or chews or sports drinks or things like that? And inevitably, you're going to see that a lot of people will tell you that you should completely avoid products that use sugar. And I see this a lot is, somebody will say, oh, hey, I like to drink Gatorade on my run. Someone will inevitably say, well, you shouldn't use that because there's so much sugar in Gatorade, or you shouldn't use gels because there's so much sugar in gels or chews or whatever it might be. Now, these individuals who are saying you shouldn't use that product because it has too much sugar, I use this instead. Here's what I do instead. These individuals might be fueling with maybe something like dried fruit. Maybe they're using like a homemade bar, something that might be made with like oats or fruits, different grains. Maybe they're fueling with something like honey, maybe rather than using, I'll say, more of and we'll talk about the details here, maybe a refined sugar or a bad sugar like you might find in a gel or a sports drink. They're instead fueling with like a natural sugar, or what they consider to be a natural sugar, like a maple syrup or a honey product. Maybe they're using a gel that advertised itself as not containing sugar, like a UCAN gel. Maybe they're using sugar-free products like G0 or Noon tablets. Or maybe they're advocating that you don't need fuel at all during your run. Maybe you're just taking in water, electrolytes perhaps, or maybe using low-carb foods instead, like a protein bar. So a lot of people will tell you that you should not consume sugar during a workout. And then there might be a lot of very conflicting, confusing advice that comes forward about what to do instead. Now, some of these things are still sugar. Some of these things are not, or don't contain sugar. And this is where it gets really tricky. You are looking at all the different, say, Gatorade brand products out there. And does the average person know the difference between a Gatorade, a G2, a G0? Probably not, right? I mean, not unless you're reading the labels, know what to look for, understand, what a carbohydrate versus a sugar and the types of things you're going to see on these products. The average person is not necessarily going to have that information. So really the first piece of advice that I have for you today is just get really comfortable reading labels. Don't worry about what's on the front of the package, because the front of the package of all of these different food products and sport products The front of the package stuff is meant to be marketing, right? The front of the package is giving you the information that they would want you to have, what they want you to think about their product, or what they want to advertise, right, on the front. On the back, the nutrition facts panel is where you get the unbiased facts about what's in that product. How many grams of carbohydrates, how many grams of sugar, if there's fiber or if there isn't. And then, of course, the ingredient list is going to tell you what type of sugar is being used, what's the form of sugar that it contains. And so I think that's really the most important thing here, is just to always be in the habit of, rather than just taking things sort of at face value, either based on what marketing you see on a website or on a package, information or advice that you get from other people about what they like or why they like it or anything like that. Just getting really comfortable reading the labels, looking beyond what the marketing is trying to tell you. So, off my soapbox now about that. Let's talk a little bit about what exactly sugar is. And I want to get everybody on the same page here when we talk about sugar and sort of defining that, because I think this is another reason why nutrition, and especially this area of nutrition, is so confusing and so conflicting, is because when people are talking about sugar, they might not all be talking about the exact same thing. And sugar, the word sugar, tends to have a little bit of a negative connotation these days. So we tend to think about sugar in a very sort of negative, bad, fearful sort of way. But let's sort of neutralize that. Let's just kind of bring it back to, sugar is just a word that falls under the category of carbohydrates. So yes, we have carbohydrates. And then within the realm of carbohydrates, we have different types of carbohydrates. So if you think about carbohydrates as being sort of an umbrella, underneath that, we have sugars, and then we also have starches, and then we also have fiber. So when we think about sugar versus starches, this is where a lot of you might remember learning, say in school, about the difference between simple versus complex carbohydrates. What's very, very important to understand here is that complex carbohydrates are made up of the same molecules as simple sugars. There's just more of them, all kind of attached together. They're all linked together in very long, somewhat complex, sometimes chains. So the difference between the simple versus the complex carbs are not that they're so dramatically different in their actual makeup. It's just the structure of them is different. And so they take longer for us to break down. They don't taste as sweet. They have different properties in a food. Then we have, if we're talking about, say, simple sugars, so the sugars that taste sweet, foods and drinks and things like that, that taste sweet to us. We have added sugars. And then, yes, we have natural sugars. So natural sugars are going to be things that are like fruit. The sugar that you find in milk, right? That would be considered a natural sugar. We do not add it to that food. That is something that's just found in nature the way it is. A sugar like syrup, maple syrup, or honey, yes, those come from nature, and so they are natural sugars. But at the end of the day, added versus natural, the grams and the calories and all that stuff is the same. So if you're choosing a sport product that is made with honey, or a sport product that is made with, say, white table sugar, the difference in the long run really isn't that dramatic. And it's something that I would say probably isn't worth paying a lot of extra money for, paying a premium price for a product that is made with honey or maple syrup versus one that isn't. If you're looking to cut some costs as a runner, then this is a great place to do that. Now, the sort of caveat to that is that, some people find from a tolerance perspective, like digestively speaking, they like certain things. They find that certain things sit better, certain things work better, in which case, yes, find what works best for you. And unfortunately, if it comes at a little bit of a premium price, then that's, the way it has to be. But from a health perspective, we're talking specifically about intra-run fuel, these things that we're using just to get some quick calories in during a workout. We don't need to be breaking the bank on things that are made with specific types of sugars. Now, in general, we want to minimize the added sugars that we consume in our day-to-day lives. Unless you are a runner who really struggles to meet your calorie needs, if you're someone who needs to consume, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories a day because you're running a tremendous amount and you have a very, very high calorie need, then you may need to consume higher quantities of fine carbohydrates, added sugars, things like that, just to meet your calorie targets. If you aren't, if you're, say running a little bit of a lower mileage, maybe you're looking at changing your body composition, you want to see a little bit of body fat loss, or, maybe just reduce long-term health risks as well as a runner, then we do want to be mindful of the added sugars that we consume in our day-to-day lives. To give you some specifics, this is going to be no more than about 24 grams per day for women, 36 grams per day for men. Now, this is not including the sugars that we might consume as part of our intra-run fuel. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to come back to this. But in general, that's going to be about 100 to 150 calories per day. So it's not that much. If you're someone who is a, pop drinker, fancy coffee, beverage person, candy eater, etc., then perhaps you might really, be surprised at how quickly those added sugars add up. But if you aren't someone who really does consume a lot of added sugar frequently in your day-to-day life, then this honestly can be a pretty generous amount. You can find the sugar content of your different foods and beverages and things like that by looking at that nutrition facts panel. It's going to tell you exactly how many grams of sugar there are per serving. Obviously, we want to look at the serving size and just sort of know, like, are we looking at the serving size for, say, half of this chocolate bar or half of this bottle of iced tea, or is it the whole thing? Am I going to consume the whole thing or am I not, etc. So just look at the serving size, what that is compared to how much you're typically going to consume, and then look at how many grams of sugar you might be getting in that food. So again, we're going to come back to this later on, talk a little bit about why we are not as concerned about added sugars as part of our intra-run fuel contributing to that overall daily limit. So what's important then is to think about how sugar is broken down and digested. So we talked already about what sugar is and, the categories of sugar and where they come from, and why we are, less concerned about the types of sugars that we consume and why the exact source of the sugar isn't the most important thing in our lives is because at the end of the day, all carbohydrates are broken down the same way. The only difference is that these complex carbohydrates or starches take longer to be digested because it just takes more time for those more complex structures to be broken into their little individual pieces by our digestive enzymes. So the complex structures of these things are what take longer for it to be broken down. Therefore, it's in our digestive system for longer. Therefore, we have a slower release of that sugar into our bloodstream. We get less of a rush of that sugar into our bodies. And for, our day-to-day eating, our meals, this is a good thing. This is a great thing. The fiber that we find in grains, fruits, starchy vegetables also slow down the digestion of the carbohydrates. And this is why we promote high fiber eating, right? Eating whole grains, eating whole fruits and vegetables rather than, say, drinking juice. Why we recommend choosing, high fiber foods like beans and lentils and chickpeas as really great protein sources too. The fiber is also a carbohydrate, but it's a type of carbohydrate that we actually don't break down. So we don't get to access the calories that are found in fiber. And so it's just passing through our digestive system for the most part intact. And this really slows down our digestion and is very helpful for keeping us full in between meals. So, of course, this is also important, and I want you to remember this for later. So fiber is key for, slowing down our digestion, keeping us full. But at the end of the day, all of these different carbohydrates are digested the same way. Now, the key here, the important thing, the difference between our regular meals and snacks throughout the day and our intra-run fuel is the speed of digestion. There's a huge difference between the goals of our intra-workout nutrition and the goals of our regular meals and snacks. And that is such an important factor to remember and consider when we're talking about the different products or the different foods and choices that we might make, is that your breakfast, lunch, and supper and the fuel that you're taking in during your long run are two completely different things. The goals of those different fuels, the goals of those different eating opportunities are completely different. Our regular meals and snacks throughout the day are meant to be filling and satisfying and full of a variety of nutrients, right? We want to eat our breakfast, eat our lunch, eat our supper, eat a snack. We want to be full for several hours after we consume those foods. We don't want to be constantly hungry throughout the day. And we want the nutrients that we're getting from that meal to be as varied and as mixed as possible, right? We want protein, we want fats, we want fiber, we want all the different vitamins and minerals that we need. That's the goal of eating throughout the day, is to get in all of this nutrition. During a workout, that goal is completely different. During a workout, we want quick energy, right? We want to get calories, we want to get energy to our working muscles as quickly as humanly possible. There's no point in consuming something during a workout that our muscles aren't going to get that fuel for like an hour, right? The workout's done by then. So to be consuming foods that are very slow to digest and slow to break down, contain a lot of fiber, contain a lot of fat, contain a lot of protein, that are going to take their time to just slowly digest over the course of that workout does not make any sense whatsoever. There's no point in taking a gel, drinking a sports drink, or doing anything like that if we're going to be done the workout by the time we're actually getting that fuel, right? You want fuels that are going to get to your working muscles as soon as possible. And also, not only for the benefit of actually getting the energy to your working muscles while you're still doing the workout, but also you don't want to have a lot of food sitting in your gut during a workout where they can contribute to gastrointestinal issues, GI distress. So we want to get the fuel into our bodies as quickly and efficiently as possible. We don't want anything interfering with the speed of that fuel being broken down and digested. And we want to deliver it to our working muscles as quickly as possible. So there is, again, a dramatic difference between the goals of our meals and regular meals and snacks throughout the day and the goals of our intra-run fuel. So this is where simple sugars, added sugars, right, these sport-specific products are really ideal. And this is kind of their time to shine because they are rapidly digested, right? They are as rapid to digest as our technology currently allows. And of course, these are things that scientists have been working on for many years of trying to find what is the most rapidly digesting sugar. How can we speed up the delivery of this energy to our working muscles? What's the most energy that we can take in? How do we combine different types of sugars to really maximize the amount that we can consume and we can digest during a training session or during a race? And so this is a whole area of science to really try and deliver these calories to our working muscles as quickly as possible. So simple sugars, added sugars are ideal because, of course, they are rapidly digested. They don't have things like fiber, protein, or fat slowing down that digestion. And they provide the quick energy we need without filling us up, right? If we are trying to consume 60 or 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour, but we're consuming, maybe 10 or 15 grams of protein or fiber along with that from, say, a whole food source, we are going to have a really hard time continually taking in that 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour because all the extra fiber, all the extra proteins coming along with it is sitting in the stomach for longer, physically filling us up and slowing down that digestion. So we want things that are in quick, out quick, getting out to our working muscles to give us the energy that we need. So all that to say that, when we're talking about sugar, yes, day-to-day eating, we want to be careful of minimizing our added sugar consumption because sugar does not give us the other nutrients that we need. It doesn't fill us up for long. It doesn't provide the benefits and the purpose of consuming nutritious foods. But we don't want to then turn around and fear sugar as an intra-workout fuel source. Like we don't want to say, okay, well, I shouldn't have sugar, too much sugar during the day. It's not good for me. Therefore, it also must be bad for me during my workout, right? These are two very, very different scenarios, nutritionally speaking. So don't fear the sugar in your intra-workout fuel because you do in fact need it, right? You're burning these calories right away. You're taking them in and you're burning them like as quickly as you can. These calories are not being stored as muscle glycogen, and they are definitely not being stored as body fat. So if you're listening to this and you still are considering swapping your energy gels or your chews or your sports drinks for like other different options, other intra-workout fueling options, that's totally fine, but it is not necessary unless it's a personal choice, either because, you find that things are not sitting well, you're having GI issues, you are, looking at the cost and looking for something that's a little bit less expensive. There's lots of reasons why you might want to make a change, but because you have been told that you should be fearful or you should be avoiding added sugars, that is not a good enough reason. One other example that I see a lot is that people will talk about consuming something like applesauce pouches during a workout, during their runs. And that's great. Applesauce is delicious. I absolutely love it. My children eat it every single day. And honestly, when I fill up their little containers, their little mini reusable pouch things, mama gets a spoonful too. So I really love applesauce. I think it's great. However, the little pre-made applesauce pouches, like the ones you buy from the store that have a little straw and you suck on them, those only have about 12 grams of carbs per pouch. So if we imagine, and we mentioned needing to consume, approximately 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. I mean, 30 would be an absolute minimum. If we need that much carbohydrate per hour, we are talking about a tremendous number of applesauce pouches on an hourly basis, right? That's a lot of fuel to consume. It's a lot to put in your stomach. Might be a lot of fiber for some people. It's a lot to carry. It's heavy, because of the water content that you're getting from something like applesauce. Like there is a lot of water in that pouch, which would take away from how much fluid you need to consume. But still, it's very heavy. It's very cumbersome. It's a lot to just like physically be consuming. So there are some sort of logistical things to consider. And again, it's about finding out what's best for you. But if you wanted to say take an applesauce pouch or two, maybe an hour, and combine that with some other things, I love that. Variety can be a really helpful thing here. So, yes, we don't want to be fearful or avoid added sugars or sugars in general as part of our intra-workout fueling strategy. But there is nothing wrong with being mindful of our added sugar consumption outside of our intra-workout fueling. And, I mentioned before just those daily targets and just generally how much we can limit our added sugars to. And as I mentioned, we want to do this, especially if we're someone who is just thinking long-term health. Maybe we do have some goals in terms of body composition, or we don't want to be overdoing it on calories, or we want to just be making sure that our calorie goal for the day is mostly being allotted to nutritious foods, things that are high in fiber, are high in protein, are giving us the vitamins and minerals that we need. So the best way to be mindful of added sugars in our diet, the best way to make it easier to limit the added sugars outside of our workouts is to, look at the labels, read the labels to kind of see how much sugar we're getting in a day and just make a mental note of what maybe our portion sizes can look like for some of those different foods that do contain added sugars. But the other thing is to actually like fuel our bodies properly before and during and after our workouts. And I want to give an example, and I love this example because I just see it time and time and time again with the people that I work with. So many runners are training fasted in the morning, doing a workout, maybe a pretty long workout with very little to no fuel beforehand. And then by the afternoon, you are completely exhausted. You are feeling just completely run down and exhausted, low energy, starving. Maybe you're doing intermittent fasting as a nutrition strategy, or maybe you just feel better when you don't eat, you have some GI issues or whatever. Either way, you find yourself in the afternoon, maybe snacking on, candies or chocolates or something like that at your desk. So you're just, kind of eating to keep your energy up in the afternoon, just having some candies or eating chocolate or whatever it might be. That can add up really quickly to then being considerably over your added sugar limit for the day. And you still maybe had a crappy workout because of it, or maybe had crappy recovery because you skipped that pre and intra and post workout fueling. So you're getting in the sugar, but at the wrong time of day. Whereas if we were fueling up properly, having a pre-workout snack, getting in that intra-run nutrition, having our post-workout recovery meal, then in the afternoon, if we are truly hungry and we want to have a mid-afternoon snack, which we obviously can, you should always eat when you're hungry, then we're going to choose a snack that's higher in fiber and higher in protein that's going to keep us full for a little bit longer. So rather than removing the added sugars from our diet completely and saying, well, no, just stop having any sugar whatsoever. Maybe we're just switching when we're having some of those sugars so that we can use it to our advantage, use it to have those really good quality training sessions so we can get better results from our training, and then in turn fuel ourselves with those higher protein, higher fiber foods outside of the workouts so that we are full for longer after having them. So that is it for today's episode, all about sugar and your running. Some things to consider when it comes to talking about sugar. What do we mean when we say sugar? How do we define that? When should we have sugar? When should we not worry about sugar? And of course, what are our limits for added sugar for the day outside of our running? If you're listening to this episode and you really would love some help with your nutrition strategy, you want to perform better, you want to improve your body composition, you are maybe struggling with just feeling low energy, not getting good results from your workouts, not seeing changes or improvements in body composition that you want to, I would absolutely love to help you out. I would love for you to join my online program, the Fuel Train Recover Club. That is a great resource for all things running, whether you're looking for help with your nutrition. It includes coaching from me. So you're not just going online, doing the modules left to your own devices. You can connect with me, ask me your questions, get that coaching that you need to be successful. All there in the online program. That's the Fuel Train Recover Club. I also, of course, do provide one-on-one coaching, both nutrition and run coaching, combination of the two. You can find more details about that at the link here in the show notes. And then, of course, I also, if you're looking for just a quick nutrition tune-up, if you just need a little bit of info to get you on the right path when it comes to your fueling strategy, I have my Fuel for Runners online course. That is a great one. We take the key modules out of the Fuel Train Recover Club program. I've got those just really succinctly put together in a nice little course that you can go through just to get the step-by-step info that you need to create that personalized nutrition plan for yourself. And of course, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those via email for anybody who is part of that course. So I've got lots of different ways that we can work together to get you on the right track, get you set up with a personalized fueling strategy, a training program, the advice and coaching that you need to be successful. So if you're looking for more info, if you are like, yes, Steph, I definitely need help, then you can find all of that in the show notes. All right, that is it for today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, found it helpful, gave you a deeper understanding of sugar and, some more of the ins and outs around that, how you can use it to your advantage as a runner. And, of course, still include all of the sweet things that we love in life. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. I really appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and we will catch you right back here for next week's episode. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.